Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kendall Brittingham. I work for Harris Seeds, and this is Troy. You guys probably recognize him if you've attended any of our other masterclass sessions. He's been our wonderful moderator. We're really excited to have him present his own session tonight on lean farming. He is the CEO of FarmBridge and a farming coach. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Troy.
All right. Well, thank you, Kendall, and thank you to everybody joining us tonight and everybody that's joined us for the last 3 sessions. We've actually really enjoyed doing this. We love bringing on the guests, and a special thank you to Kendall and Harris Seeds for helping organize this so that we can make this happen for you. And so we also really appreciate all the feedback. A lot of you have provided some excellent feedback for us, which is great because it helps us think through how to build these for the future. And we have something exciting to share with you guys on how we built this into a free course program you can go back and watch and tell us what you'd like to learn that didn't get covered in this masterclass series. And so we'll get to more of that later, and you'll receive an email of what that looks like. But lots to cover tonight on lean farming. So let's dig in. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so lean farming is not a new thing. And so we're going to dive into what actually it entails. I know some of you probably use it. I've talked to a handful of farmers that love the Lean Farm book by Ben Hartman and all his work there, and have implemented some of these processes on their farm. And so I've built this deck to be very in-depth because I understand there are a few of you that are familiar with lean, haven't tried it, versus some of you that are experts in it. And so we're going to cover a lot of different areas. So a little bit about me. FarmBridge is pretty new, so I want to spend a little bit of time here, and then we'll dig right into lean. I come from a corporate background, 10 plus years in finance and strategy. Started off in accounting and then migrated into strategy, where I had the opportunity to build culture programs for a $2 billion company. But within that is what I learned to love most, which is helping people. And so what's kind of led me to this is I just wrote down 2 things I love in life. And agriculture was one, because my wife and I care a lot about where food comes from. And then most importantly, teaching our kids where food comes from. And so having them build better food journeys into their lives. And then education. And so I speak in schools around mindset topics, bullying, and stuff like that. So just that's kind of how the transition happened. While I was at the organization, I took an opportunity to become a lean certified green belt, where I basically coached Kaizen events, small project events, and lean different parts of the organization to help them reduce waste, cost, and time efficiencies. Entrepreneur and creator, and so I am the founder of FarmBridge. We launched FarmBridge in 2019 as an online farmers market model. It ran in the state of Michigan, but full transparency, it wasn't built well and it didn't operate well. And it's because I was still trying to figure it out. I didn't know what I could do to help. And so we went back to the drawing board, but plus throughout that journey, any farm that would have me in the state of Michigan, I would drive out to their farm and just sit at their kitchen table, walk the farm, sit in the greenhouse, and just listen. And so what came out of that is the brand new platform that we launched in August of last year, which includes business development, marketing tools, online directory tools for farms. It also includes tools for farm workers, where they can go on there, build profiles and everything, because a lot of what we learned was hiring good talent. And so we're slowly building that up, but it's similar to almost like a LinkedIn for farm workers to help you guys connect with them, to help them build their brand and share their experience. And then there's also connections on there for farmers markets and local consumers. Additionally, I'm a thought writer, so I do some ghost writing and some writing for myself. And I mentioned that I'm speaking. So why FarmBridge, and then why let's dive into lean farming. And so this is kind of where the fire comes from my wife and I. We started to dig into our journey of food and what we love so much, and we realized we knew nothing. And so I wanted to get out there in the community and not only learn from farms, but learn from people within the food space, whether that was farm workers, farm labor unions, whether that was local food systems, like how local food systems work, not only just with markets, but with restaurants and everything. And so I knew nothing. And so I started from there. What I would uncover is what really set the fire for me, which is The farm bankruptcy rates, 11% increases in the last 5 years and 19% stated in 2019. And so that scared me, where I was like, I want to do something to help out here. Food travel, I don't think this is new to anybody on this call, which is, food that travels from 1,500 miles away declines in nutrients, right? And so local food really does matter, not just supporting the community that's around you, but also the content of the food being produced is better for our bodies. Childhood obesity. So this is one that really stemmed the mission for FarmBridge, which is 4% a year in the last 5 years increase in childhood obesity, and it's currently at a rate of 18.5%. That's ages 2 to 19. And so that really started the fire for my wife and I, because we started to notice like what kids eat in schools and how they eat Pop-Tarts for lunch. And just there's just so many dynamics there around the food system, around convenience, around grocery stores, layouts, sugary foods, and things like that, that we couldn't just ignore. And so all of these things kind of stem into why we built FarmBridge, and the way that we designed the new model to be a connection point and resource for the entire ecosystem of local food. All right, so before we dive into the depth of lean farming, and also too, I want to mention the last few sessions, I've been able to kind of manage the chat box. So when you guys chatting questions and Q&A and all that, I'll do my best, but because I'm presenting the topics, I probably won't get to it till the end. So if there is a burning question or something that Kendall feels like she should bring up, I'm going to let her jump in and get to that. So I apologize. I won't be in and out as much as I've been in the last 3 sessions. So to get us started here, what do we actually know about lean on this call? And so I'm going to have, actually, I'll fire up the poll, but tell me if you're a expert in lean, you practice lean a little bit, you've heard of lean before, or you're not familiar with it at all. And I've just put a little joke in there about, is this cattle farming? Just give me an idea of where you're at. So I'm going to go ahead. It looks like Kendall launched that for us. Thank you, Kendall. All right, so about 80% of the votes are in. Most of you are not familiar with it, which is excellent. So like I said, I built this this report to be all about the basics, but also in depth. So hopefully you cover a lot here. There is one expert, awesome. Maybe they can chime in some things that I missed, because like I said, I don't know everything. Practice a little bit of farm on lean on the farm today, 15%, and I've heard of lean in farming before. So great. All right, so let's dig in. All right, so what is lean? Lean is a customer-focused approach to improve quality, cost, delivery, and staff satisfaction. And so why I call out these points is, what you'll notice is lean really is a theme of, how are you thinking out on the farm? Are you constantly thinking of ways that you can improve? And then how are you thinking through implementing those improvements? And then within that model is these 4 components, and is it customer focused? Meaning when you go out there on the farm every day, are you truly thinking about what drives value to the customer? Because ultimately that's the end result of how you sell your produce, how you run your business, and how you make it profitable, is the customer. And so lean is not only improvement, but it's always customer of mind. We'll also dive into elimination of waste. And so naturally, when you cut costs, when you reduce processes, when you do things that you repetitively do for years that you shouldn't be doing, it creates waste. And so lean helps you identify that. It helps you bring it to light, bring it to the surface, and have conversations with your team. What lean is not, it's not a silver bullet. So there's no process in here that's going to say, implement lean today, and you will never have to do anything the rest of ever you run your farming business. So what it is, it's a continuous improvement mindset that will go from journey to journey to journey, which means you'll constantly reset your baseline. And that's naturally going to happen anyways, because your farm's going to change, right? You're going to change what you farm, who you farm for, where you're farming, the size of your farm. I mean, all those things can change. And so does your processes, and so does your ability to improve them. So what is a lean thinker? And so this is just a fun graphic that we created. So like the optimist would ask the question, why is this glass half full? The pessimist would say, why is this glass half empty? But the lean thinker would say, why is this glass twice as big as it should be? So in other words, what are you out there doing today that is unnecessary? Like you just do it, but it's really not necessary or drives no value into the process, not only for you, like creating time and stuff, but also to that customer. So there are a few principles in lean. Ben Hartman covers this in his book as well. So if you have the book and you cover these, you kind of have an idea of what I'm going to cover here. But it's specifying value from the point of the customer, identifying and creating value stream maps. And so it might seem a little time consuming to dive in and do this for your processes on the farm. But what it does is it truly gives you a visual. So what you're going to see when we cover later is like what you actually think it is in your head when you have a conversation with somebody versus what it actually is on paper, and then what it could be after you put the improvements in. So that's where creating process maps comes in. Flow. When you move around your farm, when things move around your farm, when people move around your farm, does it feel like it flows? And if it doesn't feel like it flows, then that means that it adds a lot of constraints into your process. And so lean helps you get to that flow process. Production on pull. That means instead of actually pushing out your product to people, like saying, I produced all of this, I need to sell it, I need to get rid of it, I need to have it, you're out there, you're pushing it to people. That's not technically the best way to operate. The best way to operate is a pull method, which is to really gauge the mindset of the customer. What do they want? What do they want more of? And it doesn't mean that you can't test. So there's always opportunity to go in there and test a new product and everything. But then you take that data and you still generate that pull mindset, which is what did they really tell us and what are they pulling from us? How much do they want? How much should we put into the ground? And then lastly, strive for perfection, which means it's never going to be perfect. And we shouldn't always jump straight in and try to do everything up at once. It's always going to be a gradually improvement over time and to slowly reduce that cost line and improve your bottom line. So from a visual perspective, when we're thinking about what continuous improvement means, it doesn't mean that if you had a standard last year and then you dip because of, let's call it economic factors, COVID, whatever it is, it's not bringing that back up to the standard. That just means returning to the standard. What it actually means is where's your actual baseline of where you should be, and then where can you get to from there? That's continuous improvement. Once you get to that point and implementing some of the strategies and practices that we're going to talk about, that's when you set your new standard and you operate, you measure, and make sure that it's effective. And then, as mentioned, you build on that journey and that becomes your new baseline. So what are some basic tools? What you'll hear throughout most of the presentation is thinking smart. So most of you maybe have heard of this before. It's not a new concept. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, which means, are you thinking smart about how you're approaching projects? Are you coming up with an idea to improve it, but it's really not time-based? It's not achievable. It's not realistic. I want to do this, but it's going to take me 5 years to do it. And so where's the effort and impact that's coming in from that project, right? And so to apply a SMART concept, and we're going to dive through this more, will help you figure out which projects to prioritize as you're going around your farm. Concerns and expectations. It's important to gather where your team's at, where you're at, where your team's at in regards to concerns. What's happening out on the farm? What could be improved? What are some pain points? What's the team feeling? How are you feeling? How are you operating the farm? Does it feel overwhelming? Are you doing too many things? I mean, getting those things down can really help you dig through what could be improved and maybe what could be relieved off of your plate. 5S. It's really just an organized work environment, and we're going to dive through what the S's are, but what does the layout of your farm look like? Like, does it shine? Does it create a good environment for you to work in? Does it create a good environment for your employees or for your farm hands to work in? Process thinking. Are you identifying what your customers need? So are you continuously, not only are you regaining customers, growing your customer base, growing sales, are you continuing to think about that? And so that way you can always evaluate the customer's needs, especially if they're changing. And then PDCA, which is Plan, Do, Check, Act, which is structured problem solving. We've all probably had times where we tried to implement something on the farm or even in our personal life. And when we go to think about doing it, it makes no sense, right? Or we do it and then the outcome is definitely not what we expected. Well, PDCA actually helps you think through what you should adopt, abandon, and then sustain. And so we'll walk through that example, but it's really to give you that structured thinking so that you can do something with the most probable outcome that's desirable to you. So what is concerns and expectations, or what does it look like? How can the farm be profitable in today's market conditions? And so even though this type of question is more of a vague blanketed statement, it helps generate conversation. And so what we're going to get into later too is, do you host huddles, like team huddles on your farm for 10-minute a week, 15 minutes a week or whatever, to gauge those conversations? So what this looks like is putting something on the board that you can actually dive into in more detail, but getting that concern out there and letting the team know, letting yourself know out loud that you have something you want to explore. Then you match that with an expectation. So I have this concern, but what should I do with it, right? And so the expectation might look like highly profitable farm with over 75,000 in sales in year one and 100,000 sales in year two. And so when you set those expectations, that's what allows you to also start setting goals to work towards and then building the implementations towards those goals. 5S. And so any work that we have an opportunity to do with farms, this is the one that I always lead with because it can be quite simple to teach. It's very easy to structure around your farm, and it creates the flow right away. And so there's some free templates and tools out there that I'll point to you guys that you can use for this, so you can see how you can document it and how it works on your farm. But basically sorting. So identifying unnecessary things. You go through your farm and you say, what are we doing that is not necessary? And it doesn't have to be production wise. It can be tools. Do I have a whole bunch of tools around that I never use? And does that cause clutter? Do I have things that are laid out on the farm that doesn't make sense and it creates things? Straighten. How can I remove things out of the way? Like, meaning if I have tools that are sitting out on the farm, do they get in the way of people? Do I have things in the barn when I'm trying to build my CSA packages and boxes that kind of get in the way? Like, what can I remove? What can I straighten down on my farm that's not needed? Shine. What does your area look like? And so can you put some time into cleaning up your greenhouse, cleaning up your barn, cleaning up your farm? And what does that look like? And what that happens is there's proven statistics on why that drives motivation for people on the farm. And so naturally, people that work in a farm that feels very clean, very inviting, very easy to work through tends to actually spark motivation, hardworking, and more easy thought process versus going out in the farm and feeling a little bit frustrated, not knowing where things are, being asked to go grab a tool to harvest with out in the field and not having any clue where it's at. And right, so it helps build those environments for people. Standardizing. And so what do you do today that's actually consistent? Because if you go through every day and you do things a little bit different, that's always leaving room for not only error, but it's also leaving room for misunderstanding, miscommunication, missing things that should be done the right way and having to go back and do them again. And so standardizing would fall under that standard operating procedure. And then sustain, which is most important, which is what are you actually going to do on the farm to change things? And then what are you going to do to implement it and monitor? Because sometimes we like to implement it and then hope that it works and cross our fingers. But what we really should be doing is measuring and making sure that it's effective. So a little bit about process thinking here is what part of steps actually go through a farm on a typical day. And so there's a tool referenced here on the slide called a SciPoc. I'm not going to dive into SciPoc in too much depth. Again, there's a template out there that's free that you guys can use, and I'll point you to that. But basically, it's from start to finish, how does my farm work, and do I understand everything within how my farm works? And if I do, excellent. The next step would be, how do I communicate that effectively so that I can lead my team on the farm? And so process thinking really goes from two ways, right? It's help you identify what you could be missing as what you should know of how a farm operates from start to finish versus how you communicate that effectively and lead your team. PDCA, we talked a little bit about this in length, so I won't touch too much on this slide, but structured problem solving. So you're basically going to go in after you find your root cause, and you're going to really determine, is this the right solution? Should I abandon, adopt it, or sustain it? And so it's a way of life or a cycle that helps you discover that process. All right, so the next phase here we're going to really talk about are the phases of lean. And to get into those, we're going to talk about tools and principles that you can practice. So what I'd like to do is gauge where you're at on this. And so what areas of improvement are you seeing today that you need on the farm? And so on the poll here, I'm going to have Kendall fire up for you guys. Field operations, is that where you see most of the improvements at? Resources, do you see most of your improvements in labor, capital, equipment? Admin work, you wear too many hats. Are you doing almost everything on the farm, and where could that be leveraging resources better? And then none, I'm a rock star. I mean, you don't need any improvements. Your farm is excellent. All right, we got about 70% in. Majority are coming in on field operations, so not surprising there. Resource and labor and capital equipment, good. Admin work, yep. One rock star, awesome. And this is typically what I see. Admin work sometimes is a little bit higher. There are a lot of farmers out there that maybe don't have the resources, so they do everything, but also kind of just have their hands in everything and have to do everything. And so that's also one that comes up quite frequently. So where we ended was 44% on field operations. Okay, so we're going to dive into every different phase of lean, and why that's important is where you're at on your farm. Each section could matter differently, meaning scope is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to scope out where your farm's at, where are some areas that you could focus on. Diagnose, how are you going to diagnose what you can improve there? What are some root causes? Design, what does it look like to build something new that actually works better? And then how you assemble and implement that project, including your team, like the accountability factor, which means it's not come up with how you can improve things on your farm and then expect yourself to do them, right? It's about gathering your team around, making sure that everybody's on the same page, and then implementing and sustaining it through accountability and project action plans. So here are some tools that you can use during the scope phase. And so what that looks like is a voice of the customer. What could you do to actually learn more about your customer that you don't know today? That could be surveys on the spot. It could be cards at a market. It could be on your farm. It could be email lists that you have. And what I like to share with the farmers that we work with too is it doesn't have to be elaborate. I mean, people love to share feedback and they like to share feedback when it feels easy. And so when you think about voice of the customer, just come up with like one question. And then when you think of that question, try to think about what you're going to do with that question. Because oftentimes it's easy to say, I'd like to know if the customer wants more greens. But the answer they give you can come in different ways. So what you need to think about is if I ask the question about what if they want more greens, my value is I'm hoping to take what they get and I'm either going to grow more greens or I'm not going to grow more greens or I'm going to grow something different. And so that's a simple example, but before you even propose a question, make sure that you have in your mind something that you're going to do with it, that you're going to actually be able to do something about it. Baseline data. So what do you know about your farm today? What can you capture? Do you know how long it takes to harvest something? Do you know how long the germination process takes? Do you know how much labor takes, like how many hours it takes to actually harvest something? When you send somebody out to harvest cilantro or whatever, do you actually know how long it takes them? Do you know the process itself? Like not only the harvest, but what does it take them to harvest it, put it in a bin, bring it back to the barn, and then move it from wherever it needs to go? Like, do you know all those data points, and what could we learn by studying those? And we have some tools we're going to cover in about how you capture that. The SIPOC we talked about, which is basically taking it from the supplier, let's call it a seed company, all the way to the customer of where you sell your product. Problem and goal statements. So we're going to dive into this. How do you, once you identify a problem, what do you do with it, right? How do you draft up a problem statement where it actually makes sense to talk through? It makes sense to have conversations with your team. And then how do you align a goal statement to actually change it? And so we'll talk through what it looks like to build it apples to apples, which means when you come up with a problem, you should technically put a goal that actually aligns with it, not a goal that is far reaching or way beneath where the problem is actually at. Project charters. These are things that we talk through when we do our coaching and stuff, but it's mostly because it helps us actually build the entire scope of the farm. So within that could be the vision, the business opportunities, where the pain points are, what's in and out of scope. Meaning I'd love to do these things, but realistically, I need to focus my time on the short-term things. And so that's in and out of scope. And then ultimately, where does your goals come in? And then data tracking. So again, it's not a attractive thing to do. And I'll be honest with you, like even in my own work, when you get done with your day, the last thing you want to think about is actually tracking your data and analyzing and everything. But when you run certain processes, you truly need to know, is it effective? Because in order to run a viable, profitable, sustainable business, you really need to know, is it working? Am I actually, what am I putting in the ground? Am I selling efficiently? Am I operating efficiently? Is the cost and the bottom line efficient? And so data tracking is not an attractive process, but it is a very helpful tool to understand what you should cut or what you should keep doing and keep making better so that you can keep maximizing that profitability. So how do customers prioritize their needs and expectations? And so that's how you kind of think about the voice of the customer, right? It's not necessarily do they like this, but how do they process the concept of liking that? How do they process the concept of how they shop? How do they go to your website, or how do they go to a market? How do they interact? And so that's prioritizing what they think, what they value. I love organic food because I know the type of practice that goes into making it. And so that then you know that that customer really values that touch point, right? Why it's important to you is once you understand who your customer is and the way they think, you can think that way on your farm and start to prioritize projects that you do. And so we're going to get into what a value stream map looks like with customer value add, non-value add, and then basically required non-value add, which is any legalities that you have to do out there as far as certifications, paperwork, and all those things that you have to do, but are typically not value adding to the customer, but you have to get done. But it helps you think through those. So where should I be focusing my time? Baseline data. How do you know what needs to be changed if you don't have the right data to support it? And so it's one thing to say, I think my harvesting carrots process takes too long. Well, how do we know that, right? How do you know that? Is it you have only one person out there doing it and it should be a job of two? You have inefficient process of how you harvest, like how you go up and down the rows, and then maybe you harvest to the end of the aisle when everybody keeps walking back with the harvest bins. Like, what about that process seems long to you? And so gathering the baseline data helps you think through, do you actually have a problem worth solving? Or is it just an area that you see as a pain point, but there's really not much you can do there? If there is much, then it's really small wins. And so it helps you prioritize that thought process. There's also tools that we'll share that can help you do that. And so, Excel is a simple tool that you can actually use. We have some templates out there that you can use too to capture that, but it's really just documenting it on paper, right? It's writing that process down and capturing that time. How long does it take you to do this? How many hours does it take a person to do this? Measuring that up to somebody else. If you have 3 people that typically may, let's call it harvest kale, right? If you have 3 people that harvest kale, but they all do it at a different time, meaning one harvests kale in an hour, another one harvests it in an hour and a half, another one 2 hours. Well, knowing that data will help you because one of those processes is more efficient, right? Or one of those processes is actually to what you maybe have taught initially, but then has kind of slowly gotten away from people and they started doing their own thing. And so, collecting that data will help you. All right, so a problem statement. It's basically identifying the impacts and using a small improvement guide. So here I indicated SMART. We touched a little bit on what that means, but being concise is a very summarized way to put this, which is it's very easy to say that I have a problem with squash. Well, okay, like that doesn't mean anything, right? And so the way that you develop a problem statement is to truly identify what the problem is, meaning last year I put 50 pounds of squash in the ground. We only harvested 40 pounds. 10 pounds went wasted. And so that helps you build a problem statement that you can actually think about, which is why did 10 pounds go wasted? And then dig into how can we improve that process? We either plant less, whether it was that or it was an environmental factor or whatever it is. And so it helps you kind of dive into what the actual problem is so you can build a specific goal statement. And I'm going to walk through an example here. And so a goal statement, again, should be customer focused, but aligned with the problem statement itself. And so in the bottom graphic here, if you can't see it, I'm going to actually read this. So for those of you maybe watching on a phone, but it says, as a problem statement, in 3 months, our farm wasted 240 rotten peaches and spent approximately 7 hours of rework disposing them. So that's very specific, right? And this resulted in increased costs of $244 in 3 months. What a goal statement would look like that truly aligns to what you just stated is to reduce the amount of wasted peaches by 50%. And so most of you would probably say, well, 100%, right? I don't want that waste at all. But realistically, again, right, you want to be smart because could you hit 100%? You absolutely could hit 100%. Could you hit 75%? You could absolutely hit 75%. But put a realistic target in there that's achievable of 50%. And then achieving that over the next 90 days. And then what does that look like to your bottom line? And so to actually calculate what 50% reduction in waste looks like in that 90 days is $122 back to your profitability. And so it really helps you put apples to apples. This is an example of a project charter that we covered. So you can see here, it actually truly like puts your farm on paper in all the different areas, not only your vision, like as far as your business case could have things in there about project focus, vision, 1 to 2 year plans, and things like that that you can share with your team. But the rest of it is truly identifying pain points so that you can articulate that to your team members and come up with plans of action. And then what is in and out of scope. And so out of scope doesn't mean don't do it. It could mean don't do it. What it really means is this something that isn't prioritized now? And so it could be a 1 year, 2 year project somewhere down the line, where in scope could be, what could we implement like this month and start tracking? What could we implement in a matter of 3 months and start tracking? And then ultimately your goal statement, which is setting some expectations related to your pain points. So this is a visual of what data tracking looks like. Again, this template's out there, and I'm going to share all these free resources with you guys. But this is a simple approach. So to track the data, you would write down the category of things that you're looking for. And so let's call it waste, right? You're going to write down your baseline data. You're going to capture it. So once you measure that process, whether it's harvesting, germination, whatever, weeding's a huge one for this. Go in and look at that, put your baseline data in, which is what is it today? And then your target is where do you want it to be? So what do you expect it to be? Where do you want it to be? And then you go through the process of actually doing it. And so in this example, you have round 1, 2, and 3. It may be something that you do once and you can only measure once a year. That's fine. The 1, 2, and 3 is if it's something you do repetitively, like if you're out there harvesting greens constantly, right? This is something that if you implement a change or you want to see a change that needs to happen, where you would want to track it multiple times, because if there's variations or there's not variations, you would want to know that, especially after you implemented the change. And then the percentage points here are letting you calculate what it actually looks like if you wanted to dig into a percent calculation measurement. So I'm just curious, before we dive into some other tools here, I'm curious, what do you guys do today on the farm? Because I've heard a number of things that people use. Spreadsheets is pretty common, but do you use spreadsheets, software programs, combination of both? None all in my head, which is always a great one, because I think we all fall into this trap, which is like, I know how to do something, therefore I don't use anything to track it. And then if the question comes up, I kind of just formulate it in my head. I've done the same thing. And it happens, but really we should kind of get those things down on paper. All right, so we have like 70% in, so it's coming in around spreadsheets is pretty high, which that's not surprising to me. Software programs, I know there's some good ones out there. I know there's some expensive ones out there too, that, you know, when you get down to it, maybe it doesn't make much sense. Combination of both, that's great. All in my head, 31%. So that doesn't surprise me. Like we do that, right? Especially if we are out there all day and we come in from the farm, the last thing that we want to do is actually document things. And so I totally get that. The challenge comes in is that if that's truly a process that you want to alleviate someday and you want somebody else on the team to handle, or you want somebody else to do, you have to effectively be able to train them on that. And the best way to do it is just put the little bit of time in to start tracking it and then train them. And if it's something that you don't want to do because it's in your head, you have so many things going on, then you can have them actually take that process from you, especially if you have that information captured. Okay, diagnose. And so I realize some of you may be in this phase today already, right? You already know maybe what you want to do on the farm, right? You've already built your business plan. You've already worked through some things that you didn't like last year that you want to change. And so diagnose is really digging in. And so I feel like most people are applicable in this phase, because this is where you can really get into whatever processes you have on the farm. What do they look like? What should they look like, and what you should care about? what you should actually focus your time on. So we're going to dig into value stream mapping, and I have some visuals here that I'm going to show you from farms we've worked with, so you can see what it actually looks like. What is value added, non-value added? Categories of waste. So when I think about waste, how can I categorize it in a way that actually I can take action on, versus just saying, man, I waste so much last year I wasted 20% of my produce. We're going to help you identify categories of waste around the farm that you can put some more attention to in detail. Root cause analysis. And so we'll dig into why it's easy to come up with the very first solution to improve something, and why we should pause and actually think about what the root cause might be. Data collection, once we have things that we want to learn more about to improve, what does it look like? And then analysis tools, meaning once we have something that we're looking at, what is it? How do we analyze it? How do we measure it? Is it effective? And so what does it look like to do that? And what are some tools to do that? So as indicated earlier, value stream maps. And so why put the time into this at all, right? This is a perfect example of what happens. And so perception, a visual on the screen shows like what we think the map is. So like it goes back to the concept of in our heads, right? When you think of, if somebody were to ask you, what does the typical harvest process look like for a CSA? Perceptively, you have an idea in your head of what that looks like, right? Or maybe your field operations manager does. When you actually put it on paper, that's what it actually looks like, right? There's a whole bunch of steps in there that are usually missed. There's steps in there that we call rework, which is, oh, I forgot to do this, or, oh, we forgot one bin, or we forgot a couple of CSA measurements. We need to go back out and grab it. And so that's kind of what actually happens, right? When you build that actual map. And then what does it actually look like when it creates flow? And so a process that's truly built on flow looks that streamlined. There may be a thing or two where it drops down into like a decision point where it's, I need to talk to my farmhand about this, or I need to have my field manager have me a conversation to change something or make a decision on. But most cases it should flow. So we build process maps to really identify not only bottlenecks that are indicated on here, but what perceptively that we are truly missing. So what does that look like? This is an example of a process that we did for a farm in Michigan here. And you can see like, we went in depth, and you don't have to, you can chunk these out. And so what I like to share, wherever you're at, if you're curious and building these for your team, I like to share, like, if this seems overwhelming to you, chunk it out, like do different processes. Like say, I'm really curious about how does CSA work? So then you grab the CSA process and you just build the steps with that. It doesn't have to be this elaborate. And so it really depends on where you want to focus. So in this case, for this farm, they truly wanted to go back to purchase seeds all the way to delivering the CSA share to the customer pickup experience. And then throughout the journey, we indicate areas where the customer cares about it. And it seems weird to say things within the process that the customer wouldn't care about, because we're like, man, we are putting all our effort and everything into this on a daily basis. Like, how can the customer not care about that? And so what you have to do is put your hat on as to what are they buying, right? What are they truly valuing when they actually spend money? And so where we indicated that is the greens here. Like, they care about the seeds that you buy, right? They care that you receive the seeds, because if you don't, they don't get the produce. They care at the end. And so this is pretty typical, right? They might care a little bit in the middle with some implements or anything like that you're doing to the soil to make it better, or pest control and things like that. But where we landed on this is they truly care about the end product, right? Do they care about the rinsing of the carrots? Do they care about the CSA box, right? Is it there for them to pick up and stuff like that? And so that helps you identify the customer. And then what is value added versus non-value added? And so like the red areas here indicate things that could have to be done. Like, you actually physically have to do them in the process, but what about that could you improve because it adds no value? And so we'll dig a little bit more deeper into that. And then the business value add, which again is what's required. Like, if I have certifications on the farm, whether that's certified naturally grown, organic, anything, food safety related, building that in is truly a business value add, which is you probably care less to do those type of things, but they're necessary. And so maybe you can't change anything about that, but at least indicating it here. So value added analysis. So we touched a little bit about this. On the green of that map would be customer value added activities, which is it transforms and shapes material information that the customer actually cares about, right? It's the movement of a product that they're going to buy, that they're valuing with their dollars. What do they care about? What does that look like? How are they receiving it? Whether it's at a market, a store, a pickup, delivery, how are they receiving it? And so does it transform or shape the material of that particular process as you go through your farm operation? Non-value added, weeding, right? Weeding is a non-value added activity. Is it necessary? Sure, right? You have to go out there and do it. Is it an area that you should focus on making the best possible? Absolutely, because it doesn't actually matter to the customer, and probably would argue you don't care about it either, right? And that's just a simple example, but what do you do on the farm that is truly not adding value that you could either cut down or eliminate? And then the required non-value add is those certifications or required business things. So 8 types of waste. And so it's crazy to think that this exists on the farm, but the first 7 you see here are pretty typical of lean farming categories of waste. The last one that we're going to talk about is something that I've built in at the end. I've even heard somebody come in with a 9th one that they call safety, which I find is interesting and probably valuable or needed. And so I don't have that built in here. But transportation. So what are all the excessive movements of products physically or electronically around your farm? What are you doing with the product? Are you moving it from place to place that's not necessary? Are you doing things electronically? Like, are you doing documentation, sales receipts, tracking, and anything like that that's unnecessary, right? That would be the electronical aspect of it. Inventory. What are you keeping that's unnecessary? And so there's a farm that we work with in Michigan called Green Wagon, and I know that they do an excellent job at this, which is they try not to store seeds, meaning like they try to buy just enough seeds, a little bit more in case the demand increases and they can meet it. But they try not to store things like seeds in their barn, right? Because that's excess inventory. If somehow you don't get to it and the seeds go bad, then you got to buy new seeds. And I know seeds is a very simple example, but there are so many things that we kind of hold on to. And what happens when we hold on to those, and do they drive value, or actually does it create waste where we have to go through and reevaluate doing it again because it's no longer good? Motion, movement of people. And so it seems so simple, but if you are harvesting, like I mentioned earlier, if you are harvesting something to the end of the aisle and you are transporting the bins all the way back to the middle so they can be put on a trailer or whatever and transferred to the barn or wherever your washing pack station is or whatever you're selling your process, if that makes no sense, that adds waste, right? And so technically you should be harvesting towards wherever you're transporting. You should be building in processes where people are working on things that actually naturally make sense. Meaning if they're building CSAs out in the field, they shouldn't be going from field to field, like across the landscape of the farm, right? They should be going within it. And so how could you almost organize your farm that it makes sense that your people are moving in a flow way, which is this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, and it actually makes sense. And so that's what motion would look like. Waiting. Are there times where you have people that are diligently doing something and then other people that are kind of waiting for it to happen? Meaning, are people out there harvesting and then there's people in the wash back station just waiting? And so that would be considered waste. Like, what could they actually do? Could they be out in the field? Could they be doing other things? Could they be doing data tracking, right? Could they be doing the things that you maybe don't care to do, don't want to do, or don't have time to do? And so what is actually just waiting time? Overproduction. What are you putting in the ground versus producing and selling? And so really dissecting what are you doing there? Over processing. Are you adding more than what's necessary? The best form that I've ever talked through with farms is like packaging. And so we realize that there are information out there that says, you want to show up in a market, you want to have good labeling, you want to have all these things that are attractable to a customer, right? A nice banner, maybe some business cards and stuff. But what are you doing that's unnecessary? Meaning, if you are packaging it up, putting a label on it, and bow tying it for the customer, but then you find out through customer feedback or voice of the customer that they don't care about all that. Like maybe like 75% of your customers say, "I love it when I get the carrots that are not washed, still dirty, look like they just pulled out of the ground because that feels natural to me. Like that feels fresh. That's just straight out of the ground." And so you want to find that out, because if most of your customers care about something like that, then you're doing over processing. You're putting more into the process and that's necessary. Not only are you wasting your time, but you're wasting cost. Defects. What are you constantly, and I know we talked about in the field operations, I believe I put in equipment and stuff in there. This falls into that. And so what do you have as far as tools on the farm that are potentially defective, repairs, things that you're spending a lot of time on. Are you repairing something multiple times a week? And I understand there are things that happen and you have to do that, but this is just uncovering where those defects are, and if you could make any improvements to help make your life better, make things better for you out there. And then lastly, hidden talent. How are you leveraging those that work on the farm? Meaning there are people out there that probably are excellent at certain things. And so if we miss this, then we don't put people in the right spot. Meaning you could have somebody that is excellent out in the field, whether it's a field manager, a farm hand. They're very good at like teaching people, like they're out there and they can actually teach people the correct way, like how to bundle things or whatever it is. Are you leveraging that? Like, are you putting them in a position to actually make your farm run better and run efficiently without you having to say anything, or with you having to just acknowledge how great it works? And so who's on your farm? What are they doing? What are their talents? What are their skills? And how can you leverage that to actually make your farm better? So I've shared here a couple of examples. I've kind of already talked through them, so I'm not going to actually drain the slide. But as mentioned here, it's a transportation in the field wash station. Inventory could be, oh, I didn't touch on this, cold storing of extra produce, right? If you have a lot of extra cold storage produce, it's fine if it doesn't go bad, but if it starts to go bad, then now you have a problem, right? And so what does that look like for inventory there? And that's just an example. Traveling of workers across the farm, waiting and pickup lines for customers could be one too, right? How you build in any type of pickup line at a market or at your farm, overproducing, harvesting a crop too soon. I didn't talk about that for defects, but what happens when you harvest a crop too soon and it doesn't turn out right, right? And how would you approach that? And well, obviously you'll have access to this presentation if you want to dig into these a little deeper. All right, brainstorming. So once we diagnose something, what do we do about it? How do we work with our team about it? And so I share this tool because it can be easy to kind of just throw things out there, but sometimes we miss like getting the feedback that we actually truly care to hear. And what I mean by that is how you lead your conversations with your team, how you brainstorm, how you solicit ideas matters. And so what I have here are two examples. And so me personally, I like to recommend doing a silent brainstorming session with your team, because what happens in a brainstorming session that is not silent, which means that people that are more boisterous are more likely to kind of be overbearing in the conversation, meaning they might have great things to say, but the people that also have great things to say are never going to say them because they either don't have a time to say them because somebody else is saying it, or the conversation actually gets super focused on the first idea that is shared that you forget to cover the rest. And so this is what silent brainstorming looks like with setting up a team meeting. It doesn't have to be 30 to 60 minutes. This is just a recommendation. Establishing a specific focus area, setting time limits, 5 to 10 minutes, and then doing it silently so you can capture every single idea, every single problem that people are uncovering, so that you can discuss each one and you have documentation of each one. Root cause is just a little different, only from the fact of that bottom bullet, which is how you can leverage the process of 5 why when you're going through brainstorming. It's just to get a little bit deeper, and we're going to talk about what 5 why is. So what does it look like? It doesn't have to be pretty. And so, sometimes we think about brainstorming like we got to pull somebody into our house or into the barn and have this elaborate whiteboard and get it done. You don't have to do that. Brainstorming looks like this. And so this is a farm in Michigan. Literally, we got out a piece of paper, long white paper there, got out some sticky notes, set a focus area, set the time limit, and then just let them write. And then they started putting them on the white paper, and then we started categorizing them about where they wanted to focus. And then we had a rich conversation around what we should focus on. And so this is literally what it could be for you and running this with your team. It doesn't have to be pretty. Fishbone diagram. This just helps you think through how you bucket it. And so as you uncover your waste, your root problems, any area you want to cover, it can fit into a number of buckets. And so this just kind of gives you a visual of what that looks like, meaning machinery. If there's a lot of things that tool-wise you use on the farm that are defective, they have to be like rigged up every time and stuff like that. What does that look like? How can we put them on the board to improve? Either you trade it in, buy something new, you hire a mechanic, that kind of would go into the machine bucket, right? Material, what type of things do we use when we package things? What do we use out in the field for training and things like that? What can we improve that? Environment, What does the farm look like and how we're sending people out there? What are the pain points with that? Measurements. When we send people out, we need to harvest something and we have an exact number of things that we want to harvest for a sale. Let's call it for restaurants, markets, CSAs, direct relationship to a customer. It's important to have the right measurements, right? You don't want to be out there actually over harvesting, especially something that you can't keep or store and sell later, because then it comes waste. And so could that be a problem? And is measurement a problem? Measurements could also be amendments and things like that too. 5 why. And so it's really as simple as it sounds like. So if you have kids, I imagine most of you or some of you do, it's the 4 or 5-year-old sitting in your car asking you why a bazillion times, right? And it feels so annoying. But how you can really repurpose that to business and make it matter. And so once you have an area that you want to cover, let's say we dissect it and we call it a root cause, right? And I'm going to actually walk you through the root cause as a simple example. Ask why 5 times. So why is that? And then have somebody give you an idea or why that cause is happening. And then ask them again, well, why is that happening? Why is that happening? And you get to the point where you probably are like, all right, stop asking me. But it helps you actually get to the level that actually you can make change for to implement it to make sustainable. Because if we just choose the first solution and we implement something, we might find out that the problem still exists. And we don't want that to happen, because then we have to go back to the process and spend all that time and effort into actually improving it again, when we could have dissected that in the first place. So this is an example of what this looks like. And again, like, this is not the be all end all, but this gives you a true visual of what it looks like to use the 5 why. And so in this example, I'm going to leverage a pint of cherry tomatoes were rotten, right? And so why? So you come up with a list of a solution or a list of problems, right? Bad soil, lack of water, too much sun, or no sale was made. And then collectively as a team, you or yourself or whatever, you decide which one you want to settle on. All right, well, we think because no sale was made. Well, why? Because we overproduced, it sat in storage for too long, or it traveled long distances in heat. Because it was overproduced. Okay, great. Why? Because we planted too much, because sales decreased, or because of economic impacts? Well, because sales decreased. Why did sales decrease? We attended new markets, new competition coming in, or poor marketing, getting our name out there and trying to sell it. And then saying why again, and then ultimately getting to this point where we attended new markets because old markets closed down. So maybe we went to a local market that was not long-standing and it closed down, or we were trying to increase our customer reach, meaning it was just one way that we tried to get out there to sell more and reach more people. And so in this example, what we got to is we could have blamed a bad pint of cherry tomatoes on too much sun or bad soil. But in this example, we got all the way to the point where it was because we tried to increase our customer reach. And because of that, the effect of that was more rotten tomatoes due to a sales decrease. So this is kind of a very simple example, but this is truly what happens when you uncover the root cause. And now they can go back and say, and I'm gonna throw one up here as an example, a solution that actually ties to increasing customer reach and how they can fix that to help out with the rotten tomatoes. So data collection, what does it look like to collect data? It just like this. I mean, this is a snapshot of Excel. Yes, I put some pretty colors in there or whatever, but really it's this. What do you want to measure? What type of data do you care about? How are you going to measure it? And then related conditions means who's going to be responsible? Once you identify this data, like what are you going to do with it? Who's going to be responsible? Who's going to track it? Who's going to measure it? Or who's going to make sure that they're almost like what you call as a project manager, an accountability person, right? And so I put an easy example here that just says process is planting peppers. Who? It's Chris. How often does it happen? Daily, weekly, monthly, and you capture that. Day of the week it happens on Monday. It takes an hour's time. Your goal is to shorten that, which means you've indicated that planting peppers it takes an hour, but it shouldn't take an hour. And so what about that process that Chris does? Can you dig into and figure out why it takes Chris an hour? These are some visuals you can use. I realize like some of you probably out here have maybe used these before, but this is simple all the way to I want to build bar charts and pie charts and stuff, right? But really the simple example is like a check sheet or a tally sheet. And so this will help you measure how many times. So why would you track this, right? Harvesting kale, harvesting spinach. Did I do it week 1, week 2, week 4, week 5? How many times did I do that, right? And what it's helping you do is you can start to calculate the time you spent. Well, how much time did it take me? Times that by 5. Who did it? How much did I put them out there? How much labor hours did it take? What was the labor cost? And so capturing this information helps you build towards those baselines so you can figure out where you need to improve things. All right, so I'm going to pause there and just we talked briefly about team meetings and huddles and everything. And so I'm curious, how often do you hold team meetings or huddles on the farm? Is it daily, weekly, monthly? Never. And it's okay if it's never, because there's always a time for that to set that in. And, you know, we're talking about ways to do that. And so it's okay if it's never as well. All right, so we have about 70% in here. And so majority is never, and that's okay. I said that's why we're talking about these things. If you feel it's unnecessary, that's totally up to you. The reason that we suggest that is to really understand what's going on in the farm. You really need to get the depth of the people that are out there, right? Or you really need to empower the people out there to give you that feedback. You also want to pulse. I mean, if I'm the farm owner or farm manager, I want to pulse on where I'm at with things, right? And it also gives me a chance to talk to people about it. Like, how's the harvesting process going? Good. You know, how much time did you spend on it yesterday? And it's not like you're pointing fingers at them and be like, oh, 2 hours. Well, you know, do you think 2 hours is necessary to harvest that? Well, I probably could do it better. You know, I could do this or whatever. So you're getting into these conversations where you can start to actually implement processes of lean. And so it helps you gauge that pulse. It helps you set that foundation and then stay in tune with people on your farm. So I see here daily, well, actually it's pretty spread even to be honest, but daily came in at 28%, which is excellent. Even if it's 15 minutes, like those touch points are crucial, right? Because you can see where your people are at, concerns and expectations, things on the farm. It really gives you a pulse. Weekly is just as great, right? Let things run and then talk through them weekly. And then monthly as well. Still, you're still kind of at least getting that touch point. So maybe if you're doing it monthly, maybe it's, do I need to do it more? And you'll know that based on focuses of what you want to do on the farm, project-wise and everything. And then we talked about never. All right, design. And so now we have problems and root causes that we talked through. What do we do with it, right? And so design means how can we start to think through solutioning to those problems? How can we start to build in action plans to actually improving something? How do we hold people accountable? How do we make decisions around what happens out there on the farm? And so we're going to dig into solutioning, impact effort analysis. And so this one comes up quite heavily. I think it even came up in the part 1 series with Michael, which is when I have something that I want to get done, or multiple things I should say that I want to get done, what do I focus my time on, right? And so impact and effort matrix helps you understand what actually takes the least amount of effort but drives the most amount of impact. And those are the things that you want to do first. Sphere of influence. What does it take to make a decision? If it's just you out on the farm, well, guess what? You're the decision maker. But if it's not just you on the farm, well, then there's other decisions that happen, right? If you're empowering your people to kind of come forth with ideas of ways to do things better, sphere of influence matters, and we're going to talk about that. Action plan, actually building out a plan that people can execute on, and then building that future state map, which is establishing your new baseline. So bringing back that pine of cherries, what does it look like to actually solution to the root cause? And so now we've indicated that increasing the customer reach was the root cause. How can we develop potential solutions to that? And so in this example, I've documented track customer attendance at new market for future decisions, meaning instead of just abandoning that new market, maybe start to track the attendance to see, is attendance a problem? Are people not showing up? Is that market not attractable? Are there things you can learn about the customers that makes you decide, I don't want to come anymore, or these customers don't really want what I'm bringing? Seek feedback from existing customers. In other words, maybe the solution is not going to a new market. Maybe it's actually growing your existing presence in your market, right? And so how could you do that? Well, seeking the right feedback from the customers that you have so you can go out there and do more to reach more people like that, more people like your current existing customer base. grow only what is needed. And so oftentimes we want to try something new. We go out to a new market, so we put more in the ground, but maybe we don't. Maybe we only grow exactly what is needed while gathering the research to figure out whether or not we should go to a new market, we should gain more customer feedback and retention. And so maybe that's the decision you make up front. And then maybe you just quit attending that new market and focus on your existing sales. And so that would be a solution as well. So what does the effort impact matrix looks like? And so once you have solutions identified, I put them here as a sticky note, but again, like it doesn't have to be however you document your solutions. Put them in a grid and have a conversation around them, because what it will actually look and feel like to you or you and the team is there are going to be things in there that are going to be low effort, right? Meaning low hanging fruit. I need to change this one thing around rubber bands or zip ties or whatever out in the field. And so it could be something that's that quick, and that would be low impact. It could drive actually high impact and low effort. So talk through those things. Most importantly, what you don't want to do is anything that is high effort, meaning it is taking you a lot of time to fix and you don't see the impact, meaning it's not actually truly bettering your bottom line. It's not actually driving costs down. The customer doesn't care about it. It's probably either something you parking lot, if it's something truly you care about doing, it's something you parking lot for later, or you don't do it at all. Even though it came up as a solution, you don't do it at all because it doesn't make any sense to spend your time on that. Sphere of influence. This is a kind of a visual of what happens on the farm, right? And so you have farm owners and farm managers that typically make the high level decisions. And then you have the farmhand and family helpers. It doesn't mean that you don't empower your farmhands and family helpers to make decisions for the farm. But in most cases, you as a farm owner or farm manager are most in tune to the process. You've been gifted with that leadership role. And so most of the decisions kind of run through you. And so what does that look like, right? Or do you have that lens with the people on your farm so that you can have those conversations, right? Because in order to truly empower somebody to give you an idea to make a decision on, they need to know what it looks like to actually implement it. Because if they give you an idea and it looks like something that you're never willing to have a conversation around improving, or saying, yes, John, go out into the field and test this and come back with results. And if what you do doesn't actually make sense, or you spend 3 hours instead of 2 hours, then I don't think it's the right process, right? But that's at least giving them the lens of how you make decisions. And so setting that foundation of where decisions are made on the farm. Action plans. And so what does it look like to build this in? And so this is a simple example of, once I have a solution, how I can set it up to be an accountability, meaning when is it due? Set a due date. I want this done by June 30th, right? And who's going to handle it? John. John could be the project manager over it, meaning every team meeting or huddle, or at least any type of touch point. If you don't have team meetings or huddle, anytime you see John, expect John to give you an update, right? John, where are we at on this? Even if John is not the person doing it, let's say John is the field manager and he kind of manages the team of farmhands out there in the field. Have those conversations where John is accountable, right? So you're saying, John, where are we at on this? All right, well, I talked to the team this morning and here's where we're at, right? And so that holds the accountability. And then having the action plan allows you to stay on track and make sure that the change is actually happening. All right, implement. What am I doing as far as an implementation plan? And then again, PDCA that we alluded to. So we'll cover these. So once we've gathered that data, then we start to think about implementing. And the reason that you do the data first, and be mindful of time, because if you think taking 3 rounds of something is actually not helping you because of time, then don't do it. Just do it once. But in this example here, we've indicated 3 rounds to help us make a decision. And so you can see where we had excess products for waste management, it was set at 45% of waste. We wanted a target of 15% waste. We achieved a target percent change of 67%. That means that we improved it by 67%. And then round 1, 2, and 3, this is what it looked like. What this helps you do is implement that solution. In other words, in order to get to this change, you implemented something, right? You gave John that task and you did something. If this was the result, then you want to tell John, like, that's the new process. This is what we want to do, right? And so this is how we come up with an implementation plan. And then we build on that and we move on to the next project. And so this opens our eyes to new things. PDCA. What should you do? right? And so what it is adopt, adapt, and abandon. In other words, once you've come up with something, you should probably think through whether it makes sense to keep it. And so adopt means, did you get the desired state you wanted? Because you're going to have a goal in mind, right? Whatever that goal is, we talked about with the charter and the goal statement, but you're going to have a goal in mind. If you didn't reach that desired goal, well, do you want to adopt it? Like, does it actually change things? If it changed by 25% and you were targeting 50% change, do you want to adopt it still, or should you go back to the drawing board? Meaning it wasn't the most effective process. It did bring some change, but maybe we focused on the wrong area. And so do you adopt it or do you not? Do you adapt it? So if there is that gap between 25% and 50, what part of that implementation or what part of the map or root cause did we miss, and just go through and just tweak it a little bit, right? Just adapt it a little bit before you say, this is the new standardized process that I want everybody on the farm to do. And then ultimately abandon. If you come up with an idea that's going to, drive time down, it's going to eliminate 20 hours out in the field of the farm hands, which is going to bring in, $5,000 in cost savings, and you go to do it and it doesn't happen, then it's probably something you want to either abandon or at least go back to the drawing board and do something. And so you have to have this type of structured thinking. That way, what is a smart focus area. Manage and sustain. And so again, I mentioned continuous improvement is a journey. We like to build these things in, but it's not a one and done. It means like once you build this in, think through other things you can change, but also keep that map for future use. And it doesn't mean that you have to keep it top of mind, but it means that your team can also have it there as an example. And so if you want to send, Linda out and say, we've been running this new process for a year, it seems to be great, but there's something about it that's missing a little bit. So, Linda, can you kind of come back with some feedback on that? That would be continuous improvement, right? You didn't just leave it as it is. You didn't leave it as it sits. You went back out and you said, what's one thing we can explore here? Standardized work. Once you come up with a process that works, it should be standardized. There should be no reason that you have, as I mentioned earlier, 5 people out in the field actually harvesting different methods. And so there should be one method that's effective, at least one method that's effective that's all agreed upon, because we all have things that we believe are better ways of doing things, and that's fine. But there should be an agreed upon effective way that everybody does things on the farm, and that's the standardized work process, which is building a standard operating procedure and making sure that everybody on the team knows exactly that's how it's ran. And then a 3C document, which is to help you measure and sustain based on countermeasure and stuff. We'll talk through that. Just to reiterate here, now that we've covered it, again, continuous improvement is the green line there, raising the standard. What are the benefits, right, of standard work? And so again, you have a standardized document that you can use for training. I think that's awesome because I believe a couple of people on Michael's even commented that not only is it hard to find skilled work out there, but to retain, right? To retain good skilled workers. And so in most cases, maybe we have to have volunteer help, CSA share work programs, whatever that is. If you have standard operating procedures or standard work, it's very easy to train. If I have a visual cue card about how to harvest something and I give it to a volunteer, it's so much easier to train them on how to do that than to say, yep, this is how you harvest, grab your tools, go out there. And then like, it kind of looks like this. Right? They're gonna go through that process with the same mindset, which is it kind of goes like this, right? And so standard work is important. And I'm going to show you actually a visual tool that you can do on your farm to help you out. And then also ensures that the team members are on the same page and you can reference something. So this is a cool example. And so sometimes when we think of standard work and standard operating procedures, it seems pretty boring, right? It's documented step by step. It's needed. This is a cool way to make it a visual. And so this is one that we did for a farm here in Michigan, which is harvesting. And so what's neat about this is we put it on a laminate card. And so we printed this picture out with the steps on it and a couple of details. It gets laminated and then they keep that out on the farm. Like they keep that in the barn, they give it to workers when they come, or they even keep it out in the field that you can reference. And so it just makes it very simple and easy to flow for training new people or even existing people. So this is what a project lifecycle looks like that we talked about. I'm not going to dive in deep to this, but this is what it looks and feels like, right? You select a process or problem that you want to fix. You draft a problem statement or you talk through a problem statement, at least with your team. You come up with an expectation that you want to set. You brainstorm for the root cause, not the just initial cause that you come with, but the root cause. You validate the root cause by tracking that data. You analyze the information. You brainstorm with your team and prioritize what actually needs to get done first. You prepare and implement it, building those action plans, deliver the improvement and see the results, and then standardize it. Once you have something that you truly care, then that's when you cement it in, right? And you standardize that work process. And so this is kind of like a typical cycle flow. All right, so that's the end of this. And so I know a lot of those I covered in a little bit of detail at a high level. But again, there are all templates and stuff out there to help you that I'm going to pass along for free to help you out. And I'm always here if you guys have questions. I'm also going to mention too that we talked about in the beginning, which is Kendall and I truly care about the information of feedback that you have around these sessions and what we missed, because we not only want to assemble team members that you think had more to offer, like Michael or Chris or Brian, but we want to think through other people that can kind of come into this space and help you with things that we missed. And so I built an actual like free course program training thing that sits out on a live site that has all of these recorded videos, including tonight. It has discussion groups built in for you, so you can actually have discussions with other people that are on this call in addition to us. And then there's a little survey at the end of that course program that you can access anytime to tell us what you want more of. And so we want to lead more of these sessions for you and help your farm as much as possible. So I'll stop there and see what questions that we have that came in through Q&A. All right, so Dennis Abbott put, what is flame weeding? And so it's a method that you can use to help weeding on your farm. And so you can use, someone to like a blowtorch, and maybe there's some farmers on here that can talk a little bit more intuitively about this than I can, because I'm not out in the field doing this, but it's just another method that you can use to go out there and help control weeds by burning the weeds down. And so I don't have any per se results around flame weeding and effectiveness. Maybe people on this call can kind of chime in. I'll jump over to the chat box and see what people can share around that, because transparently, I don't have enough information to give you on that. But it's literally what it sounds like. You're flaming weeds. All right, on the chat, just going to kind of flip through here. So good. Adrian said production based on pull, not push. What about the adage that you should run your business, not let your business run you? Good. It is your business. I totally agree with that. The concept of pull, not push means if you're out there trying to pull people to you, then you're setting the expectation for them. But really, they already have something in mind. Your job is to kind of go out there and do what you love and be able to communicate it in a way that creates pull from that customer, right? So it doesn't feel like they show up at a market and you're trying to push product. You're trying to say, you should have this, or you're trying to put things in a CSA box that the customer doesn't care about because you grew it, right? Because you produced it. And so that's really what I meant about that. I truly don't mean discount your entire business, because you are the business. It is your life. You are out there doing that. And so it is truly all about what you care about. But there is a concept in there about not pushing to the customer. How does lean farming incorporate the SWOT analysis? Good. So SWOT analysis really ties into like the business planning. And so I would consider the SWOT analysis to be a complement to the project charter that I talked about, which is when you're thinking about your business case and your vision of your farm, typically your vision of your farm, what you want to accomplish is to actually leverage your strengths, right? And then the opportunity on the side of the project charter is the opportunity, meaning it could be a pain point. It could be things that you're not doing today that you want to do. Like, what are some things out in the market on your farm that you want to do? And then the strength piece is leveraging that. Weaknesses could come out about in your root cause, right? I mean, maybe there's something that's creating waste on your farm because you have a weakness in it, meaning that maybe you don't have the right tools for harvesting. Maybe you don't have the right team out there actually doing the job that you needed. Maybe they don't have the right training. And so all of those are kind of built into lean that you could absolutely throw into a SWOT. Threat would be similar to like the example we walked through about new markets, right? Maybe what you end up uncovering is that you attended a new market, and the reason that you didn't sell is because you had high competitors there. You showed up and you grow very similar products to the other 6 farms or other growers there that have the same products. And so that could be your threat, right? And so it's very much a part of lean. I think it's just 2 tools that complement each other. Be sure your 5 why does not end on a person. You cannot fix 5 who, ask why they did that. It's hard to fix people. Yes, very good. Yes, you definitely, Tom, thank you. You don't want to say that the reason it happened is because of blame, right? You know, that's not the case. Now, could you have somebody out there that doesn't know what they're doing, or maybe you believe they should know what they're doing, but they're not, and it's not happening efficiently? Maybe the 5 why is, do they either A, not have enough training? Are they doing the right job? Meaning, should they be either A, on the farm in the first place, or 2, should they be doing something different that actually leverages their strength, that hidden talent, right? And so, yes, Tom, don't focus on that person per se, other than coaching, but focus on why that process is not working. Yes, 3 C's. We didn't get to cover that. So that is countermeasure, counterpart, and conclusion, I think. And I'll come back to you on that one, Karen, exactly. But think about it this way. It's a sphere, so it's a circle that has 3 pies. And the reason that you do that is you're trying to measure the cycle of a project. And so if I have somebody working on something and I've only touched the surface or the sliver of the implement, meaning if I want to go out there and I want to change process steps A through E for harvesting, I don't know what you call it, squash, right? Where you might be in the 3 C's is having somebody actually change the way that they bring the tools out and how they load themselves up, meaning how are they putting, if it's needing rubber bands, if it's needing bins, are they setting bins in the right spot? And so how are they doing each subset of a particular plan? And a 3C helps you measure that. So once you have a full bullseye colored in, that means that that project is complete. And so it's just another visual tool to help you out. Jeff said that he is a flame weeder and uses it regularly. So good. I mean, I hear pretty commonly that this is something that's used. And so I would encourage, I can't remember who said it, Dennis, I would encourage you to just research it, and you can see out there's some videos on how it can be done as an effective method for weeding. Let's see here, Jessica. We sell produce at a farm stand that we grow. Sometimes we have some produce left over at the end of the day. Is it okay to offer those at a lesser amount the next day, even though we will pick fresh produce again? Will the customer get used to that and just wait? So I think, Jessica, I think this question actually came up in Michael's too, and Michael's knowledge, and I'm going to just lean on his expertise because, you know, he's way better at this than I am. He would tell you yes. Because if it's going to go wasted and you're going to leave for that day and nobody's going to have it, then that's actually dollars lost for you. And so most people that come to a market are going to buy what's fresh. You're going to have those people that are going to, you know, be the last ones there that are going to maybe get a discounted thing here. But ultimately, if it's going to go to waste, you want to get rid of it. And so I think in Michael's terms, it's, you know, save those dollars for you. Don't just waste that. Flaming is the only way I get my husband out. All right, Katrina. Katrina said Flaming is the only way she gets her husband out in the field to weed. All right, that's great. Maybe I just lost my spot here. Maybe Katrina's husband can share some tips with you, Dennis. Jenny, thanks for the great talk. I was thinking about offering home deliveries. Any thoughts on making it work? I know transportation was one of the areas to look at. Yes. So it really just matters on how you build this into your operating model, because people are open to pay for delivery costs when it makes sense, right? When you build it into the value and it makes sense, but it has to make sense to you too, meaning don't discount your travel time, don't discount your logistics of it. Like, how many houses are you going to? How far are you driving? And what does that look like? And so what I can offer you, Jenny, and anybody on this call is there's a farm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that is, just imagine the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right? It's very spread out. And so she built a CSA model that she had to kind of come up with a CSA delivery model because there was really no centralized location for her to be able to do that. And so why I'm offering that is the farm is Uper Produce, and her name is Laura. I am willing to connect her to you, Jenny, or anybody else on here because she loves sharing her process, but she's actually built something that is effective when it comes to a delivery model. So the answer is yes, it can be developed out and we can help you resource that. Mary Connor, you are not really burning weeds, Google it and there will be lots of stuff. Okay, great. Thanks, Mary. Like I said, I don't know. I'm not out there actually flame weeding. And so I would lean on others like Mary and stuff to uncover that. But I use that as an example because people are doing that. I've tried flame weeding. It doesn't work great on green weeds, but great at the end of the year. And depending on how you use it. Okay, that's great insight, Sarah. Dennis, I hope if you're still on, these are all great things to consider. Jessica, it is required to wash produce before display and sell, or can they be left out? So that is truly up to the customer, right? That comes into the voice of the customer, because you're going to end up finding like the people that love buying your produce love your packaging. The people that love buying it love the labeling, love how you bundle carrots, love how it's washed and ready to use. Like, you're going to find that out about your customers. And so that's going to take a little bit of feedback. And like I said, keep it simple. And so whoever your customer base is today, or whoever you can talk to at a market, on your farm, or wherever you interact, ask a simple question and say, do you like when the produce comes directly hand-picked right from the farm, where you can just take it home, it's fresh? Or do you like when we build that wash and pack station in? Because not only does that matter to you, but it actually helps you with your process, right? Because you're going to need to know whether or not you need to build in costs, because if you're going to actually be out there washing and packing, that should be in your cost model. Like, don't be supplementing your income to wash and package things. If the customer cares about it, that should be built into your price model. Thank you, Stephen, for the nice comment. I really appreciate that. Do you know what software is good for online sales? There are a lot of them out there. It's really going to depend on what works best for your farm. And so the reason I say that is I think there's Barn to Door is an example of one where I think they even build like a website for you and help you run the online sales piece or set it up. I think Barn to Door is one. Local Line that was on here is obviously one. I think Harvey does a little bit of online sales software programs. Trying to think. We have one. So like when you sign up on FarmBridge, you can list your products for sale. We per se don't have transactional, so we don't promote that. It's really just a direct to consumer approach for anybody that wants to load it up there. So we have one, but I'm not going to tell you that it's probably what you're looking for if you want an all-encompassing model. Those are the top ones that come to mind. I'm going to wait and see, Stephen, or actually who sent that? I'm going to wait and see if other people chatted in on what they're doing, because I don't like to advocate for other companies, because I like to advocate on what is useful. There are, I think, there's close to 70 people still on this call that probably leverage some type of online sales platform. And what I'd love to do is hear from them, right? Because if it's working for them, then it's probably likely to work for you, especially if you run a similar model. And so that's why I offer that advice, and I only stick to a couple of names to throw out there. Thank you, Ernest, for the comment. Marie, how do you decide how much energy to put into selling your product at your own place versus exploring farmers markets? So there are a lot of things that go into this. So you kind of have to understand where you're at. Meaning, like, if your farm is in a good location that people love to travel to, I guess I should pause there. People love to travel to it because it's a farm that creates an environment, meaning it's an educational farm. It's maybe you have a small shop or store there. Maybe you have pets or whatever, or people to come and see. If you have attractions, then I would say put some energy into that, because you have people coming to you and they care because you've built in these amenities, right? If you have a farm that is literally just a hub for people to come get your products, you need to figure out, is it convenient for them? Because if it's something that they have to drive a long distance to come to, you're going to have to really think hard on how you leverage that in a way that they care, right? And so that's one thing. Farmers markets are nice because there's people already going there. And so the concept of you going there means that you're going to attend, even if there's a handful of other growers that grow the same thing as you, you're going to ultimately gain exposure because of not even marketing that you did, because of marketing that the market did, because of customers already frequenting that market. And so you can slowly gain customer base through other people's avenues. In other words, leveraging other people's resources of location, time, money, marketing from the market, and all that kind of stuff. Location, like people centralizing location around a market, excuse me. And so those type of questions are what you should ask is like, does your farm actually promote the environment for people to come, the attraction wise? Does it create convenience in people that are driving through? Like how many people work at an office down the road that driving through actually makes sense? Even if it's out in the country, like if they work on this road and your farm happens to be the drive through, that's an excellent way to position it, right? And so consider those things. But again, a market is always worth exploring, especially if you want to get your name out there for some using free marketing. Dennis, great comments. All right, great, Dennis. I'm glad that you got some feedback out of the flame weeding. All right, good, sweet. All right, so people are chiming in their online useful ones that they have. So I have local food marketplace, largely works with hubs and farmers markets, though. Squarespace for our CSA, awesome. So anytime so it says importing a CSA file with their products on it into Squarespace and then into QuickBooks. So you can leverage the same file for both. That is efficient. And so thank you, Adrian. That's an example. Square or QuickBooks are great tools. I see Square Online here again is free. Yes, it is. You can set up a little mini website on Square and then have it run all your transactions, including your Square reader and everything. And so Square is absolutely a great option that doesn't encompass actually leveraging an entire software program, right? Square gives you everything that you need as far as you can build in reminders to customers. You can take the transactions, you get receipts, it sends receipts to the customer. It allows them to sign it on the spot with the Square reader. I mean, Square is absolutely a useful tool for people. Is there a chart that tells when to plant a variety of different vegetables so they are ready at the same time? Yes, that is very much of the process of lean because if you segment it correctly, then you are harvesting right in line of where it should be, right? You're not waiting or you're not making your customers wait based on those varieties. And so, yes, there are tools out there. I'm sure a number of people on this call actually could help you with what they've done in the past as far as seasonality and leveraging that out. But that is absolutely something you should consider because when you do that, not only are you leveraging your time and your produce, but you're doing it for the customer. Yes, Square. It says Square is great, but ends up with transaction fees. Unfortunately, it does. I mean, I think they charge like 2.5% and like 13 cents on the transaction or something. Yes, it does. Absolutely. Honestly enough, like that's the way that we built FarmBridge on that purpose because we realized some people want to just handle it all in themselves. And that's what our model has, where like you work directly communicating with the customer and then figure out the payment on your own. So there's nobody middlemaning it with percentages. But yes, I mean, the nice thing, the way that I like to position this too, Sarah, is like if Square is an option for you to build a small website platform with a store and a transaction and you hate those fees, build it into your model. Figure out a way to, if you have to, save costs somewhere else and build it into your price, or figure out a way to build into your price that customers are still willing to pay for. I'll tell you this, there's a farm that operates, I think somewhere around like $1 million vegetable production here. Every time I go to the market and use a card, they say up front, hey, if you're not going to pay in cash, there is we like to charge a small fee for transaction fees because we end up paying that ourselves. And so it could be that upfront, right? I mean, you're saying like, we really want to give you this produce, but we end up paying all these fees and, we set the price that it should be. And so if you're willing to kind of cover that fee, I'm willing to, let you pay with card. Just be open and honest with people. Sometimes it's great. If you use Tend, it's now integrated with an online platform that pulls from your expected harvest. Oh, nice. Okay, so Tend, I believe, because it's capitalized, TEND, must be a platform that you can use and integrate for your harvest expected harvest plan. Johnny Seeds has good reels for planting. Awesome. So Johnny Seeds, which is a well-known seeding company. Obviously, there's a lot of them out there. Maybe even Harris Seeds actually has something that you can leverage too. But it sounds like they have some planting calendars out there, so I'll leverage that. It looks like Karen. That's what Karen uses in Connecticut. Awesome. Let's see here. Rooted. Nancy recommended Rooted. Very useful for flower farmers. Okay. I haven't seen Rooted yet. So Nancy, this is new to me, and I'm actually going to check it out because I'm just curious to present options when people ask. So that one's Rooted. Self-serve produce stand. What types of payments work best? Okay, John. This one is interesting. So I like to recommend that it depends on where you're at because people. So a self-serving produce stand can be excellent if it's built in the right way. People understand how to use it. People are accountable and using it in the best way. And then to capture payment, you want to make sure that it's if you're not going to be there, that it's some type of like drop box, right? It's some type of lockbox that people can slip cash into. Obviously, you can't run a Square payment, but I'll share this with you, John. There are options out here where we've done with farm stands where you build in an online sale pre-ahead process, right? So you promote it as you're running an online farm stand. And so what happens is you get customers to buy on your online store, and then you have that produce ready for them, and you can time it right. Even like you can say, tell me when you're going to be there so I can appropriately put it out. However you want to manage that so that it's trustworthy and accountability. But that's an easy way to actually capture payment without having to get cash in a lockbox or require people to slip dollars into the process by capturing up front. And so they pay ahead of time and then they swing by and they grab it. So that is absolutely one. We've done that with partnering. So if it's something that you feel uncomfortable about where your farm's at, but there's like a greenhouse or a flower stand or something down the road that wouldn't mind you doing that, then you set up all your sales to have pickup there. Like you set up a little table there and you have all your orders ready, and then they swing by that location and pick it up if you feel like your farm's not a viable option for that customer to come through. I use Square for farmers market pre-orders. Great idea to do this for a farm stand pickup too. Yes, I mean it is absolutely out there, right? I mean, think about how many. I feel like people are starting to care a little bit more about where their farms are near them, and if it's people that live next to you, besides just having like a stand out there that has like blueberries in a little box or whatever for people to grab, like you could truly build in a process here. Especially if you have like a turnaround driveway. We have farms that have like a little U-turn. It is perfect. Like you just kind of store things that people pre-order online and they kind of pull through, and whether you're there or not, or maybe your kid's there, or whatever, and they hand it off, but you have like their goods just sitting there and they kind of come through and they grab it and they go. And you can build in some monitoring processes if you feel uncomfortable, but it's absolutely an idea. I got started with a self-service stand for 10 years. After we got to about 75,000 sales, made more sense reasons to go full service. Nice. Thank you, Daniel. That's a perfect example of how to operate a self-service stand for 10 years, making money at doing it, right? There's so many cost-effective models in there, and I'm sure Daniel could jump in and chime in all of these, right? Because if you're running a self-service stand, nobody's manning it. The cost to help prepare it and the cost of customer acquisition, really the customer is coming to you. So talk about building in cost efficiencies into the process. You're not paying a fee to go to market. We use Square Appointment for curbside pickups. Good. Customers give us 2 hours notice, then arrive at a farm. We assemble orders, then provide contactless pickup. Good. Thanks for all these examples, guys. It's really helping out people with these questions. Karen also mentioned Venmo as an option to capture payment from people ahead of time, which is great. I mean, they could pay you based on your name through Venmo if you have a Venmo account. Thomas, there are phone apps out there that let people pay with their phone at self-service stands. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. If you have a self-service phone, basically the customer can come up and pay it as an invoice, right? You have it sitting standing and then they execute it when they come and pick it up. So yes, Thomas, that is absolutely an option and efficient way to run it through not only you, but the customer. Going to clear some of these. I see there are a few people on the call still. If you have any lasting questions, please chat that in. Otherwise, I want to personally thank everybody, not only for attending this session, but all the sessions. Kendall and I really appreciate it. We see through the feedback that you guys have gotten some value out of this. We really enjoy putting it together. and we enjoy doing more. And so we hope that you engage in the link that we built out with the videos and the group discussions for future, because we truly want to hear where you're at, what you want, and it'll help us build in the data and the presenters that are most knowledgeable in those areas. So thank you again. Thank you for attending. We hope this is valuable. And then reach out to us again with any questions in the future.